Changing yourself is not the challenge here. It is just showing the dark side of the moon, differentiate the Dr. Jekyll from the Mr. Hyde, becoming the alpha version of yourself. Welcome. I am your host, Mistress Athena, professional dominatrix and sex coach. My aim is to teach you everything I know about pleasure and seduction, and to get your kink life to the next level. Of course, always remember to play it safe and take care about each other. Today we will talk about how to get acquainted with the role of the dominant and how to embody it. Now, let's imagine for a second that you are relaxing yourself in the living room with your partner. It is one of those cozy evenings where everything seems to go in a very usual and predictable way. The both of you had, a chatty evening about what happened during the week and what will be the next plans and the next night out with your friends, regular stuff. But after that, you feel that silence is penetrating the room and you feel your partner is a little bit uncomfortable. Out of nowhere, your partner tells you, I don't know how to put that, and I've been thinking about it for quite a while, but how would it be if, I'd like you to dominate me and tie me up and play this and that, and your partner is clearly trying to expose its fantasies. And maybe your partner doesn't feel very comfortable, but here it is. She wants you, or he wants you to be the master of this well-exposed fantasy. Some of you could get to face this situation and will probably ask themselves, how will I face this particular request of my partner, wanting to be dominated by me? You will find yourself suddenly before the challenge of becoming a dominant master or dominatrix. How to fool yourself in that dominant role? When you never did that before, you will feel doubt and maybe fear of not fitting in, and hopefully these feelings will not flash away an eventual and potential unforgettable BDSM journey with your partner. And this is what this podcast will be all about. It can probably bring you some light and give you some help of the master or dominatrix you can become. Now, before I start going deeper in how you embody this role of the dominant, know that anybody can do this, right? Even though you're not a dominant in your deepest core self. But what does it mean to be dominant? Dominance means having authority over your partner. Secondly, it means that you have to step into total power. And the third is, of course, you have to be responsible of the development of the game and responsible for anything coming out of that game. You will see that later. Of course, to do that, to be dominant, you have to act, you have to speak, and you have to think accordingly. That means that you know what you want and how you want it. You express yourself to get a certain expected result, and then you apply sanctions and rewards upon it. In short, that is what BDSM game looks like. Let me illustrate this with a short example, because I am a dominant myself and I have a lot of examples to share. So for example, at the beginning of a game, I like my slaves to sit in a certain position when they present themselves to me. If they succeed in doing this, I will of course reward them. They can, for example, kiss my Louboutin shoes, or, if they don't succeed, if their legs are, for example, not well spread, I will apply a well-chosen sanction. For example, I take a cane and I will hit the inside of their legs so that they understand that the position was not right. And they can adjust, because if I hit the inside of their legs, they will spontaneously open their legs. This is quite magic after all, because I don't even have to put something in words. Some acts speak for themselves. Now, in that case, I know exactly what I want and how I want it. I want my slave to sit on their knees with their legs spread wide open, hands behind their head, and heads slightly bowed down. If they succeed, reward. If not, sanction. Now, before stepping further, you have to know, and this is still very important, that being dominant means also taking care of the well-being of your sub. It's not only about pain and being a dominant. No, you have to take care about everything. Also the well-being of your sub. This can mean, for example, that you have to see when your sub is thirsty during the game, or maybe cold or uncomfortable, or when the rope is too tight. You see that by or communicating with your sub, or looking at certain corporal reactions. When somebody's cold, you can see that by the goosebumps, for example. But all of that I will talk in another episode, because now we are talking security and comfort. What I want to tell you about being dominant is, you know that certain dominants are natural born dominants, such as myself. But others can play that role perfectly. There is no problem about playing a role and not being naturally born dominant. This podcast can help you embody the role of the dominant. Or maybe figure out what kind of a dominant you are once we are stepping into the archetypes. Oh, let me have a sip of tea. Well, you know that in a relationship, when you're in a relationship with your partner, you'd like to please each other. A relationship is based on love, probably, or something else maybe, but it is based on pleasing each other. And that is probably why you will do your best to step into that role and help your partner with their BDSM fantasies or fetishes. If you really don't see a way to play that dominant role, you can always search for the help of a professional sex coach, kink coach, or a professional dominatrix. The outcome will be completely different. The kink coach will help you embody the role and have more knowledge about what's going to happen during the game. They will also show you how to play the game according to the blueprint, the erotic blueprint of your partner. On the other hand, the professional dominatrix will play the game in your place, or maybe help you in the game. But the dominant will probably, take the forehand in the game. Now, let's head over to the part where I'll tell you in a few steps how you become, let's say, the perfect dominant. Or to explain you what different aspects there are to become that master. Now, first of all, this is very obvious. You have to listen carefully to the fantasies and fetishes of your partner. This is the erotic blueprint I've been talking about previously. While they invite you to listen to this whole new fantasy world, make sure to ask questions, listen to their expectations. This will guide you for perfect indications in what will be expected from you. Yes, indeed, the sub might have expectations, and as the dominant role you'll play has something to do with that particular fantasy of your sub, you have to listen to these expectations, to that particular erotic blueprint. The role of the dominant is inherent to the suggested fantasies. For example, does the sub want a perverted master, or a latex master, or a bondage master, etc., etc.? And then you have a lot of archetypes for the dominant. And I will go deeper into that a little bit later on, but just to give you a few examples. You have a strategist. This is a dom who's making a game plan and thinking ahead of the next step in the game. You have an innocent kind of master, and you have to imagine a Lolita type of dominant, sometimes looking a little bit shy and innocent, making people want to serve you just spontaneously, just by how you look. But once you use these assets, gets these shy looks and innocent looks. These kind of masters, they gain what they're looking for. You have the demon type, is quite obvious type of dominant. It's more like a perverted dominant, looking for lust and pleasures out of sadistic handlings upon the slave. Then you have an inventor. This is a dominant who's always coming up with new toys, games, and setups. They are always looking to improve and doing something new. So you have several types of dominance, and you just have to be creative and let the alpha version of yourself express itself. Now, once you heard the story of your sub, you might not know how to react, and that is perfectly normal. Please ask for some reflection time. If you never did that before, well, there's no problem of telling your partner that you need some time. But please reassure your partner and tell them that that fantasy suggestion is really interesting, and you will do everything to take everything into consideration that it just said for an eventual game. This will give you some time to do research. Research is really important because the question that will haunt you is, how do I become this alpha version of myself? You have to do some research about what a dom looks like and how they act and what they do in games, what kind of toys they use, how they get inspired. How do you do that? Is you consult literature, videos, and also songs. Look at, for example, Erotic from Madonna. It's talking about BDSM and how she is a dominatrix for a night. You can always get in touch with your sex coach, of course. She will guide you step by step to become that person and to set a perfect game plan. But game plans are for another podcast. Now, the real core of the question is, how do you embody the role of the dominant? And this, of course, without talking toys and game setups. As I stated before, being dominant is about how to have authority, how to step into total power, and how to have responsibility. So these three aspects, authority, stepping into total power, and responsibility, is something I will go deeper into detail. They are really important. How do you come to that result? And of course, this is by acting, speaking, and thinking as a dominant. This is just like an actor. You'll become that person once you are stepping into the game. Now, let's split up those elements. First of all, how do you gain authority into the BDSM game? Gaining authority has something to do with the relationship to your sub. How will you become a credible dom? You have to find out what you want and how you want it. You need to figure out all of this based on the erotic blueprint of your sub, because you cannot ask your sub to do something that he doesn't desire, that doesn't fit into his erotic blueprint. You have to go to something that is expected from you. That is why it's so important to have a game plan worked out and to listen very carefully to your sub and to have a conversation about it all. You have to gain assertiveness in everything you do. This is normal. By having a game plan set up and knowing exactly what's expected from you, you're more capable of directing the whole setting and also gaining strength into the role you will embody. Of course, these things I will say are quite obviously, you have to stand tall, you have to never stand below your sub, and never bend below him also. You have to look your sub straight into the eyes. Express yourself with confidence. And that is also something you do by giving straightforward indication. Never express yourself doubtfully. Here it is. You have a difference between, for example, can you, maybe bend down, please? Or bend down. Be straightforward. Never doubt. Don't ask questions. Your sub has to listen to you. And not listening to you, as I explained before, is giving consequences. Then you just apply sanctions. If she or he listens to you, well, you apply rewards. That's the game. Of course, you have to make sure you articulate. It's the same with actors. You have to make yourself understandable. Your communication must be impeccable. If the sub then doesn't listen or doesn't hear, well, the blame will be on them and they were not concentrated enough. And here it is again, a reason to punish. Well, how do you step into total power, and what is it so different about gaining authority? Total power is more about the relationship you have towards yourself, your self-confidence, whereas gaining authority is about the relationship towards your sub and being a credible dom towards your sub. Now, stepping into total power is something fun to do because you have this part where you have to dress up like a dominant and you feel power all over you. Just imagine how you fit into that restricted corset pushing you up into the air and you stand straight. Or you fit into these heels that push you also up into the air and make you walk into the room with these echoing tick-tack of your heels. Of course, you have to search your own style and do some research. What I will suggest here is you have to invest in clothes that make the difference for yourself. It's better to go for something more expensive that you really like and instead of buying something that will not incorporate 100% how you pictured yourself as a dominant. Building a wardrobe is an investment in your sex life. That's true. It takes time, devotion, and research. And in the beginning, you might try things that you will completely regret, just as I did. Like, for example, I bought this pink latex body, and that bodysuit is something I will never dress again. It's a total mistake, in my opinion. That I will make a special podcast, probably on clothing and styles, to get your personalized wardrobe. It is something fun, you know. Now, you step into total power again, and I will repeat this again and again, by behaving like a dominant. Look straight into the eyes of a sub, have a game plan all set up, be ready, and never bend below your sub. Be irreproachable and impeccable. Now, something else is you have to work on your self-confidence. And self-confidence is something not that obvious. That is a complete different topic and a whole topic again for another podcast. And you will find a lot of them about self-confidence. You can gain this through other ways than, sexuality and BDSM. You can do this by engaging yourself in sports or doing other activity. You have to get aware of your self-worth. An exercise in itself for that is you have to take a piece of paper and write down what you like about yourself and what you dislike. And the things that you like about yourself are those that you will highlight to become the alpha version of yourself. The last part of, becoming the dominant and stepping into that role is you have to take responsibility because, as you already heard before, with great power comes great responsibility. Everything you do in the BDSM game has a consequence. If you ask somebody to kneel, make sure this person will enjoy kneeling. There has to come pleasure out of it. This means that some persons are more sensitive about their knees, for example, and the pain resulting from a long-lasting knee-engaging position could bring unwanted pains. Make sure to check on your sub if the positions are bearable. And in some heavy plays, you continuously conversate about how the pain is evolving, just to keep your sub in a state where the pain is acceptable to enjoy the pleasure coming out from it. Another example is that, for example, you cannot ask your sub to sit on its knees while she or he is wearing Louboutin shoes. It could ruin the shoe and stress your sub, or maybe just to even bring like an uncomfortable situation such as where you as a master command your sub to sit on its knees, and the sub then feels very uncomfortable and says to the master like, sorry master, I cannot execute this because I will ruin my shoes. And you will lose power in your game, and you have to take certain things like that into account always as a master. you will see that every decision is calculated upon the comfort of your slave and the framework you agreed upon to play and the level of pleasure that is being searched for. You are indeed the responsible one as a master. Something very important I'm going to tell you is, please don't change your core identity. Your partner loves you for who you are. Changing yourself is not the challenge here. It is just showing the dark side of the moon, differentiate the Dr. Jekyll from the Mr. Hyde, becoming the alpha version of yourself by behaving, speaking, and thinking from your Freudian Über-Ich perspective. That is quite a complicated way to say that you have to behave, think, and speak like a dominant. What you just heard is my dog in the background. Now, an example of different archetypes a master can embody, this can be quite a fun exercise for yourself, is, what kind of archetypes are you going to embody? And maybe these archetypes already live in you, because just as what I stated before, don't change your core identity. You will find these archetypes already in you. Just, you can, with the information I'm going to give you, you can incorporate them into a game. So this is a non-exhaustive list of, or just a few examples of characters that can coexist in the same master. These are archetypes. The first, for example, is the intimate. This is the type of master that can bring sensuality and intuitive understanding in the emotional needs of the sub. They have this kind of infinite capacity of understanding the sub's erotic and sensual longings. And they can also feel like the need of being comforted. Then, for example, I have the shadow diver, and this is a very interesting one. The shadow diver master is somebody with a deep psychological understanding of what's at stake for the submissive. That somewhere between childhood and adulthood, you have, fetishes can be born, and the shadow diver is someone who will bring them to life in a subtle manner in the game. A shadow diver can bring slaves through the catharsis. They need to feel peace with their past. This master is excellent if your fetishes has a deep-rooted and sometimes traumatic origin. He's like an archaeologist of the psyche and brings BDSM game as some kind of a therapy. Now another example could be the sage. The sage dominant is someone who has the experience and the wisdom of the BDSM game. He will most likely teach a submissive how they can stay centered and in touch with their feelings. This kind of master has a great discipline and is gifted with compassion and empathy. It's making a great partner for submissive who have problems to let go and maybe having self-confidence with the idea of being a submissive. The sage is someone who you can really rely upon. Other examples, you have so many. The poet. The poet is a master with a lot of imagination, and it's really running free during the session. Every action is based upon his imagination, and the game he's setting up can become a true work of art. He's able to synthesize the beauty of every moment and make the moment more vibrant. Look at the ecstatic work of certain shibari artists, for example. The siren is, you can see it as a kind of femme fatale tricking you into her charms, and once she put her spell on you, she will frustrate you, tease and denial games, use you upon her knees. You will find yourself caught in a very dangerous and charming presence, you know that? You can take her tease, but can you resist it? Will you be able to face the consequences? And of course, the Siren Master can also be a man. None of those archetypes are bound to a certain gender, okay? I just do that for example purposes. So a nice other example for Master is the Inventor. A lot of DOMs embody this type of master because we need to be creative and problem solving at all times. But if you dive deeper into it, the inventor is always in search for a better way to results and better outcomes also. The inventor has always a lot of tools that can fix certain issues in a session and is always in search for innovation. I know a Dom who was always building new toys and new tools, finding new ways to try out bondage, for example. We used to do a lot of kidnaps at that time. And every time she found like a new way to tie up and fix the sub to the back of the car with boxes, with nails, with screwdrivers, with duct tape, plastic wrap, just please name it. A true inventor. Another one, quite an obvious one, and I've been talking about this previously, is the demon. And this is, this is the one making BDSM look like a quite dark practice, the demon master. This archetype by excellence is the sadistic one and is taking pleasure in giving pain to its submissive. Now, a very interesting archetype is the healer, because this one is looking after the physical and mental well-being of the submissive. This type of master knows what the sub is needing for. It is also a nurturing type, and he's enfolding his arms around the submissive after the session play, and he's taking care of the wounds that's left behind, the psychological or the physical ones. This type of master is perfect for persons who we have childhood trauma or express their trauma through BDSM game. The healer makes you think maybe about a previous one that I've been talking about, is the shadow diver. You see how they can connect with each other. These two masters, you can see them, for example, in a movie I saw previously. It's called The BDSM Meester. It's a Belgian movie based upon a true story. It's about the story of a judge who started BDSM with his wife because she needed it, because she dealt with some trauma. It's a very nice movie, actually, and it's based, again, upon true stories. The very last example I want to put in light is The Observer. Could be a very nice example. This master is attentively examining the smallest detail of the sub and what he is all about, how the sub is reacting. His needs to observe can be like a result of search of perfectionism, fetishes, or something else. He's mostly a quiet type and taking a lot of pleasure from the view of the scenes he's constructing. Think about the bondage master again, roping up his sub gently, slowly into the perfect position so he can enjoy the sight of certain body parts, or just enjoying the reaction of the sub while floating into the air and feeling helpless. These are just a few examples, and there are so many other archetypes. You can incorporate several of these archetypes in your personality and in your game. All these archetypes, as I mentioned just before, they interact with each other inside of you. Understanding your archetypes can give you depth into your game and focus on developing your dominant approach to BDSM. As you see, BDSM is very rich, and you can consider this as a spiritual journey in finding yourself and the other. As a dominant, you can use this information I just shared here to start your personal quest to the kind of dominant you will likely to become. First, by considering how to gain authority, how to step into your total power, and then, of course, how to take responsibility. Then secondly, you can ask yourself what type of personality, what kind of archetypes inside of your personality you can transpose into the master you will become. I really hope you enjoy this podcast, and don't forget that you're welcome to ask me as many questions as you want. Don't forget to share this podcast if you enjoyed it, and stay tuned on my social media for the next episode.